Welcome to Lean Into Leadership, where we lead the conversation about anything and everything leadership related. On today's episode, ESG returns to the show. Welcome back to Lean Into Leadership, or if it's the first time you're joining us, welcome to the show. This is episode 12, which is exciting. This is our first repeat guest on the show.
Oh, well, I'm honored.
Erin Smith-Gaken. We're super excited you're here. I can't wait to jump into our
Thank you.
We always have great conversations outside of stuff, so we had to bring you back to the studio.
Do. Yeah.
It's going to be a great time. So
excited to be here.
Yeah, and we're excited you're here too. And if you don't know Erin, a little bit about Erin, currently you are, and you've had a professional change since the last time you were on the show.
I really have.
What, a year and a half ago?
About a little, well, yeah, when we recorded, it was probably at least a year and a half ago. But I've been gone for a little over a year from higher ed. Yeah.
So currently you're the manager at Transform University, which is inside the company you work for, NTT Data Business Solutions, which is kind of like the hub for training and development for all employees, would you say?
Yeah.
At the company? Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. So you do a lot of stuff we're going to talk about in today's episode.
Yeah.
But also, you've had around 15 years of higher education experience previously.
Mm-hmm.
You served as the director of new student orientation.
I did.
You kind of led all the the success coaches when that was a thing here at CMU.
Correct.
And then also jumped into a lot of recruitment and enrollment positions through admissions and through the College of Education and Human Services.
Yes.
And then also, too, you have a lot of experience in training development, project management, all that good stuff. So
yeah. All of that's accurate, Brandon. Great job doing your homework.
I didn't stalk your LinkedIn or anything last night, but you know what I mean.
I mean, that's what it's there for.
You have a really great profile. So
thank you so much. Yeah, I had to work on it.
I loved reading it. But it's probably safe to say they're super passionate about helping people kind of unlock their top or their biggest, greatest potential in terms of leadership and unlocking what they want to do in the world. So I'm excited to jump into it. I'm
excited to talk about it. Yeah, let's get to it.
Let's jump right into it. And how would you define psychological safety?
So I will tell you that my definition of psychological safety really comes from someone who's researched it extensively. So Amy Edmondson is a Harvard Law School or Business Law School professor at Harvard, and she is been researching psychological safety for a while. And there are lots and lots of different videos out on the internet or books that she's written that you could get a lot of information from. But there's one 2-minute long clip, not even 2 minutes, that she really does a great job summarizing what it is. And I think it makes sense for everyone to kind of frame it in any part of their life. So essentially what she says is psychologically safe spaces are spaces where everyone feels safe taking interpersonal risks. So interpersonal risks being things like challenging a colleague or providing feedback or even voicing concerns, introducing new ideas or concepts, challenging or questioning or giving feedback even to your leader, your supervisor, your boss, whoever it might be. And so doing those things that intuitively feel risky at times, right, that a lot of individuals, or probably most, might have a sense of feeling like someone's not going to like them or it's going to create ripples or ruffle feathers or cause issues for them, right, personally, damage them in some way, shape, or form. And so Amy Edmondson says that a psychological safe space is a space where we can take interpersonal risks without fear of doing that those risks are doable. And she always says, we know they're not fun, maybe they might not be the most exciting things for us to do, but the space it's doable in the space. So that's where I think it makes the most sense for all of us to know that we've all been faced with probably a variety of interpersonal risks that maybe we have felt safe to do in a working environment, but also there's probably times when we've not felt safe for different reasons. And that's your first point in being able to pinpoint in an environment that you were working in. Was it psychologically safe or not? So that's a really great way an easy way to kind of start to conceptualize it.
Do you have any personal experiences or examples about maybe like a mentor or leader that you worked for or worked alongside that maybe created a psychologically safe environment or didn't, and how did that make you feel, and like what was that experience going through that?
Sure. I would say I've been fortunate enough in my now 20 plus years of work. So before I was even in higher ed, I worked at Target, actually. And so post-undergraduate work, I've been fortunate to have a decent amount, I would say, probably more psychologically safe spaces than not. And I'll go back even to my very first boss out of college, who was my boss at Target, actually. His name was Mike. And as a young 22-year-old, right, coming out of college, that position was a result of an internship I had, where I got to work with Mike as well a little bit. And then once I was place that the store I was at, I was in a leadership role, right? So I was responsible for a certain part of the Target store, but also certain days of the week responsible for the entire store, right? When I was the leader on duty and had to make sure everything was working. And Mike did a great job at kind of creating that space where, again, I learned a lot in the internship, but still a lot to grow and learn from, especially as a very brand new leader, where you're faced with lots of different challenges, from people questioning your own authority, right? As this young 22-year-old female leader, had a lot of that, where a lot of men did not like that when I was the person they were talking to when they needed to see the manager. And so, yeah, Mike did a great job of creating a space where, again, I could kind of make mistakes, ask questions, ask for help. I felt welcomed, right? Like he was there to encourage and support in a variety of ways. And so I always said, retail was not for me, but if I could have taken Mike, my boss, and like moved him around with me, like that would have been a fantastic working career for wherever I was. So he really did a fantastic job of creating that space, not just for me, but for our entire team. And from his leadership, even down, of course, to the employees throughout the store that were, people getting the carts. So, I would say, Mike, I started off on a very positive note as a young professional.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that story and example to highlight that positive experience within feeling safe in your organization and working in, like you hit on a really important point, which I think we'll touch about a little bit more in depth later. But the idea that it's really got to start from that leadership perspective, right, from the top down, because like it affects everything that you do, right? Especially if you're looking at in terms of business, right? Not just the employees, but also customers, right? That experience. But if you think about it, and let's frame that as a student, right? Maybe in your student organization or something else. Yeah. Like it's all about that, and so it really starts from there. And sometimes maybe there isn't someone in that role that creates those environments, and it can be on the reverse side, right? It can be really challenging. Yes. And we'll probably talk about some strategies as well of how maybe you can kind of, be a leader and step up in those maybe toxic environments, if that's the case, unfortunately, and make it better, right? So that's why we're doing the tools, so you can understand a little bit more about this topic today on the show. Sweet. Awesome. Yeah. So going a little bit more into like how psychological safety connects to leadership, where do you see kind of those things infused together the most?
I would say it's infused. It starts with the leader. I generally share, when I talk about psychological safety, a quote. You heard it when we talked about psychological safety a couple months ago, that positive change doesn't happen because someone does everything. It happens because everyone does something. And so it can start with that leader, right? But if you really truly want to create that psychological safe environment, you got to get the buy-in from your team and set that example, right? And so a few things stick out to me in terms of what the leader of the group should do, whether, again, you're a student leader or once you're in a professional setting. And that is this concept, which, again, Amy Edmondson talks about as well. She has a book about it. But that viewing failure as learning. So that's one of the big opportunities that I think a lot of folks faced, is that when mistakes happen, when people need help, or, again, when they're maybe not leading or living up to those expectations, that have been set by you or by the team, whoever it might be, that you need to view out those opportunities, those mistakes, as learning opportunities, but also starting with yourself, right? So you, the leader, need to practice some of that vulnerability and show that when you make a mistake, that you can learn from it, that you are able to ask for feedback from your team, like saying as simple as, I might have missed something here. What was my misstep? What did you all see that I didn't do that I should have done, right? Letting folks contribute and offer that feedback is a big space for it. So that vulnerability piece, that leading and having the okay, right? Setting that standard that mistakes are okay. Obviously, there are some mistakes that you might not be able to bounce back from as easily, but generally, right, folks aren't making those types of dire mistakes. Generally, it's a mistake or an oops or a mess up that you're going to be able to make. So if you're able to do that and admit it, then obviously you're setting that a really positive stage for everyone else to feel like they can. And that actually leads to a lot more team camaraderie, effectiveness, productivity. It kind of like ripples then into lots of other facets of psychological safety, which includes, people being willing to share and contribute. So I talked about the learner safety, or the stages kind of psychological safety with you before too. And so the very first kind of level is that learner safety, right? That everyone feels safe to learn and grow from their mistakes, from the leader down. And then the next level is contributor safety, right? So you feel like you're able to contribute and offer ideas and and make sure that they're welcomed regardless. And so that feedback piece is huge. And then you grow all the way up to challenger safety, which is probably the hardest one to get to. But as a leader, if you're able to create an environment that makes everyone on your team feel like they can contribute challenges or share concerns without fear of judgment or negative consequences, like I talked about earlier, those interpersonal risks, that's the kind of stage that you want to set for your employees or for your team, again, your group, whoever it is that you're leading, so that you're able to kind of set that culture, to bring that culture forward. And so a lot of it is, like you said, where does that infusion take place? I think so much of it starts with the leader, but it really has to be kind of that buy-in from within. They have to see you essentially modeling the way and showing like that these things are okay. This is the culture we have here. And you can do that explicitly or not, right? It could just be the norms that take place within the group. So, and we can talk more about those norms too. But yeah, that would be, I would say the leader is a huge piece of that. And without the leader having the buy-in, right, it might probably be a lot more challenging for the employees to do that. But I would challenge anyone that feels like there might be a toxic environment because of the leader, that as a team, right, if you can create kind of that unified front together with everyone and then approach that leader at least, like that's a starting point. Maybe you need to go above that leader if that's something that needs to take place, if it's that toxic. But it does take the group kind of to create that culture. So, yeah.
Sweet. Thanks for sharing that. It's so interesting too, I think, like how so many things are connected together, right? And
Yeah.
it kind of revolves back to leadership, right? Or even if you want to break it down to just being a good person, right? Like,
Yeah.
the idea of like healthy relationships, that building those things, and like, think about like the ideas of psychological safety, feedback, right?
Yeah.
Communication, right? If one of those is broken, I feel like it tends to, those other things also have problems as well. And
Yes.
so it really, I think, working on just like that kind of building that self-awareness, looking into yourself as a leader can really start that change. And again, going back to modeling the way, right? Lead yourself first, right? I think that's can be challenging. That's so important. And I'm curious to get your kind of like hypothesis on this or your thoughts.
Sure, oh gosh.
But like, it seems like when we talk about things like psychological safety, they're, maybe not super complex in terms of like how to achieve them.
Correct.
And like, again, it comes down to working with people, but like, why do so many leaders or managers or people in power positions struggle with doing that? Like, what are your thoughts behind that?
I think that there's probably a variety of reasons. I think just generally, at least as a society in the U.S., at least in terms of cultural norms and expectations in leadership roles, that oftentimes individuals get into leadership roles without necessarily proving that they can lead people, but that they can lead processes. And that's a distinctly different thing, right? You can lead a process very well and not have to people a lot, right? And not have to do a lot of that people leading and influencing and motivating and bringing together that collaboration and all those things. But if you are getting promoted based off of your skills to lead a process, I feel like that's oftentimes the leaders that are having trouble with leading people effectively. That would be one of my hypotheses. One of my thoughts or theories would be those individuals likely may have gotten that job because they did a great job executing details of things, but not necessarily leading people to do those things, right? Which is unfortunate, but I don't think that it's necessarily something that isn't repairable. I think that there are individuals that might be in those roles that could still be able to learn and grow and develop. I think a lot of that also comes from their leaders, right? That those individuals then, everything's connected in that way that they then need to kind of take the initiative to recognize that this person is really great at this, but let's create a space where we know that they need to grow in these areas to help be an effective leader for people, not this process that they're working on. And so that's one of the main things I think. And then, loyalty, those types of things also, right? That happens too. You get promoted and it's because you've been there forever. And I think I've seen that in a variety of roles that I've had, professionally, not, in different places. And then I think the other part of it is people maybe haven't had that space themselves to learn and grow, right? Like no one's pulled them aside to take a minute to say, hey, you're really good at X. You need to work on this though, right? On Y. And without that, then they're going through life thinking that everything's perfectly fine and hunky-dory, and really there's probably some areas for growth. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I have plenty of areas for growth. Right. But I've luckily had some individuals, like I said, throughout my career who have been able to at least work with me on developing in those certain areas. And so I would say individuals need to be more willing to ask those questions about where they're able to grow and learn in order to get better and to be open to that concept, right? Again, that viewing failure as learning. And that's, I think, where people fall short. It's just not like that willingness to maybe take that initiative to grow and learn more as well. Yeah. That's my 2 cents.
No, I'd probably agree with some things that I've observed, and I think like it comes also down to like some people maybe have had negative experiences in the past.
Correct.
Asking for feedback or receiving that, and those are two very different skills, right? We
Correct.
talk about that all the time. You might be great at asking for it, but not so great at giving it yet, right?
Correct.
Vice versa, but it's again, like we just said, I think it's all connected, right? If there's a psychological, safe environment or culture,
That's what
people
they've
are
learned.
probably going to be able to take that feedback, right? Or
Correct.
build themselves, or have training and development, right? Which
Yeah.
you do a lot in your role to help fill those gaps for employees,
Right.
To get those leadership skills or those skills that they need to get to that
Yeah.
next place or to be successful where they are now. So
Yeah. And I would also say that those individuals need to view that learning opportunity as, again, a way to guide others, like pay it forward, right?
Yeah.
Like, I learned this, now I'm going to pay it forward. And so, like you said, if they came from a position where it wasn't the norm, right, they're very likely to kind of rinse and repeat those same things that they saw in their previous leaders, whether they are consciously doing it or not, right? I'll tell you that I've had to consciously make efforts to know not what to do, right? Like I've seen or had previous supervisors where I've said, not going to do that, right? Like that is not how I'm going to choose to operate when I'm in, if I'm ever in, right, a role like that. And then thankfully I was able to get essentially into a similar role. And so I think that's a piece of it too, is people are socialized, if you will, or the culture they came from. And we can talk about that too. That culture plays a big role in it too. And how those psychological safe environments are formed or not, right? So yeah, I know you probably have another question, but I can talk about culture too if we want, and how
there's
that.
some stuff that I think we're gonna get to.
Yeah, okay, great.
About that,
I'll let you ask the questions then.
Awesome. So, no, thank you for all that though.
Yes.
And I think too, going deeper on that. I mean, is there a way? Because part of that too is that individual needs to also take that self accountability to do that learning and that work, right?
Yeah.
It's work, right? To grow and be better. It doesn't happen automatically. So is there a way, like as a leader, maybe you're working with folks that maybe aren't, taking that, how to motivate people to do that, or does it really have to come from themselves? 'Cause I know sometimes, you think about you're in an environment and like maybe you're super passionate about something, and of course other people might not be passionate as you, right?
Sure.
And that, but is there a way you can kind of get people to maybe realize that when it's maybe also not their job or career, but it's more of an involvement? I'm just thinking of like a student, again, a student group or organization where you have membership that's not fully buying into that, maybe that new culture or your mission of your organization. Like, how do you maybe instill some of that?
It's a great question, because it's actually kind of something I'm faced with currently in my role, is individuals seeing the value in investing that time in learning and development outside of their technical skills that they have, right, to do their job. I don't have a probably perfect answer for you, but what I view as the best, at least my strategy, would be to show them their ROI. What's the return on investment for them? You might have to get creative to really dig deep to figure out what for each individual in a group, right? It might be different for every single person there. To show that value that investing in yourself and your abilities does have, whatever that might be, right? So you might have to customize it or personalize it to make it work for you or your group. But I would say that's at least hopefully going to be something that could take someone to that next level, if you can at least show them the value that it has. It might be small for some and huge for others. I feel like that's something that I've done in the past in roles, but my current role, I feel like that's a huge piece of what we're kind of doing right now, because my role is new-ish. It's only about a year or so old, and so it's still new to the culture anyway.
Right.
So not only am I trying to like create this new opportunity for them and to bring awareness, but also showing them what the value for them is at different levels. So, and I think that's true for whether you're a student group and leading a student group, or again, leading a group of professionals. If you can show someone how it's going to impact them or benefit them, and that might sound selfish, right? But let's get real.
Yeah.
We all care a lot about our own self and we have our self-interest, right? That's human nature. And I think that's the way to get it to resonate with someone, right?
Yeah.
So.
And the only way to do that is by getting to know the people you're working with better, right? By
Correct.
doing
Gain
these
trust.
things.
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, all connects, right?
It really does all
just, like,
connect.
starting at looking at something, just taking action, right?
Yeah.
Taking some initiative to find those ways to improve.
Yeah.
I wonder too. I'm curious because we have no idea like what the next 5-10 years are going to look like in terms of like technology with AI and stuff.
Yeah.
But I wonder if like, because a lot of those technical skills might be might be replaced. We're seeing it already with AI and other new technology coming along. I think, again, I'm just guessing, I'm assuming, but my thoughts are like those human skills are going to be even more important because that's not going to be able to do that. So
Correct.
I wonder if that maybe will motivate people when they're like, oh shoot, I'm going to need to know these for my new job or my new set of skills that I'm going to have to learn. And maybe that kind of jumps into that learning piece as well, motivates. Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe it's something like that takes some people to get on board, which it's here already, right? It's coming. So,
that's happening literally at my company right now.
Yeah.
Like we're trying to literally instill this whole mindset shift, right? From our individuals looking at themselves as these tech experts to literally viewing themselves as having more of that business sense, that more personable interacting with individuals, clients, right, based kind of approach, which is huge, right?
Yeah.
Like you need to be a person. They're people first too, right? So you need to be able to meet them kind of at that level before sharing all your cool technical skills out, showing off all your technical skills and all the knowledge you have in that. There's a lot of possible negative consequences to that too, right? If you just go in ablazing with how cool you are and how much you know about the technical piece. So yeah, I would say with that being a consideration and the shift in probably lots of different industries and roles, that that ability to recognize those kind of professional skills, interpersonal skills is going to be huge.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's gonna be interesting to see what happens.
Oh gosh, AI.
And it's not to be scared of that stuff too, right? I think like we don't know, right? This could be. You think about. I mean, some of your viewers might not remember, like even when iPhones things came along, or social media would be a better example, right?
Yeah.
Or even the internet, like everyone was freaking out, but like, it just created new shifts in different industries, right? And people had to adapt, right? And so,
and new opportunities come from it too, right?
Exactly. And it can be a tool that maybe helps with certain things. We don't
Correct.
have a clue, but it's already made changes and it for sure will. But
yes,
it'll be kind of cool to see.
It will. Let's see what happens in 5 to 10 years because it's already happening. But it'll be cool to see. No, it'll be fascinating to see what happens.
I mean, if you're in college watching or you just were, I mean, this is a great time as well because like college is a great place to learn those skills, right?
Yeah.
And I think we talked last time on your episode about making the most of your college experience, so definitely go check that out. Shameless plug, of course. But
Shameless plug.
Learn about getting involved. We talk a lot about that. It's so important because those are going to be ways that you can really build those skills. And we talked a little bit earlier about failure. Well, if you make a mistake now,
correct.
It's going to be
this
okay,
is a great time to do that.
Take
those risks.
Taste different things, take risks. So, again, hopefully that also motivates you as well. If you were to jump in, and if you're not in college, you're doing something else, you're watching this, you have tons of opportunities. There's so many great ways to take some of those new learning classes, lots of millions of things online.
Yes, they're all over the place. Yes.
So invest in yourself, right? And lifelong learning piece.
Find the value for yourself, right?
Exactly,
like why it matters to you.
Right. And I think you got to do that first before you can also help people find
Absolutely.
themselves, right? Yeah. So, and connecting. So what are 3 signs or ways a team organization is displaying a lack of psychological safety? Usually like red flags, we could say.
Yeah.
And then what are 3 ways that then you can reverse that to build or repair that psychological
Yeah, sorry, I
safety?
just kicked you. Yeah. So I have a couple of things that I would want to talk about with this. So in an effort to not ramble. When I didn't talk about this part yet, I gave you my definition of psychological safety from the get-go, but I want to jump back a little bit and share the history of psychological safety a little bit. So back in, I think it was 2012, Google actually set forth with a project. They called it Project Aristotle. And the point of the project was they were investigating, if you will, within their own teams at Google. It was something close to like 200 teams. What made an effective team? What made a productive team? And so Project Aristotle got off and running, and what Google literally expected, right, which is, I think, valid, is that they thought it would be certain attributes or characteristics of specific individuals, right? So the higher performing individuals that are put together in a team equals successful team. And I think that that's a fair thought, right? That is probably where a lot of people's brains would have went. But after years, so this was a multi-year research project. After years, they started figuring out that that wasn't true. That they had these high-performing individuals collectively in a group, but they weren't necessarily always the most productive team. And so they found that psychological safety was actually the critical factor that determined whether or not a team would be successful. And so there are a lot. So Amy Edmondson then, of course, continued to research this. And so I'm going to share a couple. I'm going to have to use my phone so I don't mess them up. But there are a few questions that folks could either ask themselves as a leader, even to reflect on, or you could even anonymously or even, share it openly within your group, ask these questions. So I'm going to get to those questions in a second. But I want to point out a couple things that Google kind of found as key indicators within the psychological safety. So I mentioned norms a little while ago. And so those norms that they found are most likely to exist in an effective, productive team that has psychological safety are something called, it's a fancy way of saying everyone has a seat at the table, but conversational turn taking. And so essentially creating a space where everyone feels like they can speak and their voice can be heard, knowing very well that in a meeting, 4 people out of 10 might not say a thing because they don't feel like they have anything to contribute. And that's okay as long as they know that they can speak, right? So the end goal is to create that environment where everyone is able to speak and can speak if and when they feel the need, right? So conversational turn taking, norm number 1. If you don't have that, that's a red flag, right? Silence at a meeting doesn't always mean agreement. Silence could also mean fear, right? Or worry or anxiety or lots of other negative feelings that folks have. Groupthink, right, might be happening. Group harmony in theory sounds great that everyone wants to agree, but also group harmony means people might be avoiding conflict, right? And so having that ability to the individualism to express yourself and have those thoughts and have that dialogue is way more important. So yeah, having that conversational turn taking as a norm, and I'm doing this because I'm looking at this table in front of us here that looking and seeing if everyone in the group here, pretend group, was able to talk, you're doing a great thing. If everyone doesn't feel that, then you're lacking. That's a red flag. You as a leader need to identify that, right? And call on those individuals, virtual meeting or in person, right? That you recognize are sitting quietly more than others. So that piece of it is big. The other norm is high social sensitivity, another very fancy way to just say you understand how to read people's nonverbals. So nonverbal communication, as someone that has also done a lot of work in communication, is something that I feel like a lot of individuals aren't quite, maybe their EQ isn't at the level to recognize that, right? But that the nonverbal reading is big in both positive and negative situations, right? So you might have someone in a group setting that is showing a lot of excitement and enthusiasm about something, but maybe they're brand new, or maybe they are lower level and they're worried to speak because even though they're excited to share an idea, they might feel hesitant to do so because they're not the leader or they're whatever, for whatever reason. So you need to recognize that it has that excitement and bring them right into the table to share and feel like they can be heard, again, regardless of the level that they're at. The other side, though, those that are feeling or you're hopefully able to pick up on a negative nonverbal, right, that they're looking withdrawn, their arms are crossed, their head's down, they're sighing a lot, whatever it might be, things like that you hopefully can pick up on to indicate, right, that there's an issue of some kind, and that you also need to bring that person into the fold to say what's going on. Let's ask some open-ended questions, kind of get to the bottom and create, again, the space to make sure that they feel that they can. So if those two things, again, those are what Google would tell you, the main themes or the main norms that kind of rose out of the rest to show some really effective teams. So if you don't have those things, again, it's a great place to start. The other is, after all this research was done by Google, and this is when I'm going to get my phone out so I can not forget, Amy Edmondson, again, came up with these, it's 6, it's really 7 questions, to ask yourself or ask your team, like I said, if your answer to them is the not great answer, right, the answer, the opposite of a positive response, then that's something that you would want to identify as a gap. So the questions are, if you make a mistake on your team, is it held against you? So you could phrase that as, if people make a mistake on my team or in my group, do I hold it against them? Or, do others hold it against them? So you could flip it to make, again, if you are reflecting just as the leader, this is a good starting point too.
That's a great point.
Yeah, to kind of just like flip it on yourself and really be honest with the responses. If you want to be better, do better, right? Like that's a great place to start. Another question is, are you able to bring up problems and tough issues? So do you create a space, right? Are your group members able to bring up tough issues or problems? Do people on the team sometimes reject others for being different? So that's another one that's a big one that has to do with that inclusion safety that we talked about. Everyone has to feel welcomed, diversity of thought, all those kind of components rolled in. Is it safe to take a risk? We talked about that. That's an easy one. Is it safe? Do I make it a space that's safe for people on my team to take a risk? Do we celebrate risks, people that took risks, and then they turned out to be really positive results, right? So that's a big piece of it too. But thinking about risk taking, this is the one that's actually 2 questions in one. Is it difficult to ask team members for help? And do people on the team deliberately act to undermine your efforts? So that, again, you can think of from the leader, flip that on yourself. Is it difficult? Do you make it difficult for people to ask you for help, or even peers? And then the last one is, are your unique skills and talents valued and utilized? So that, again, are you recognizing everyone on your team? If you're thinking about this, again, as a reflection piece, are you recognizing that this individual might not shine here, but I know that they're really great at this? So let them do more of that, but also take the time to help them in those other areas of growth as well. But give them that chance to feel like they're contributing and being recognized, and again, celebrating when they are successful in different things. And so those 6 questions are, again, what Amy Edmondson created to really help to say, this is a great starting point. So between those norms I talked about earlier and those 6 questions, if you can go through those and again, depending on your answers, that's a great place to start to say, okay, this is one area where I know I could do better, or we as a group could be better, and let's start there.
Yeah. I mean, those are great ways, and I love how you reframed it there to even talk a little bit about, like, flipping on you, right?
Yeah.
Am I doing these things, right? Because we obviously have sometimes those unconscious bias piece too.
Correct.
Like, I see when people are doing, but like, I'm not doing this, but you might be, right? And so that's okay, right? That's taking some out of that blind spot and putting it in an area that you can work on. Okay?
Correct.
Reflecting back to when you were talking about some of those, my mind kind of a little bit went to one of my more significant but leadership role I held, or leadership experience back in the day, I would say, and like where I probably wasn't creating maybe the most psychological safe environment at that time. Looking back on it now, and seeing like even that growth a little bit, and like, oh, like maybe I could have done that a little bit different in the past, right? And so I think those are good questions to really start with, like you said, to just jump into where are you on that journey? Where's the team? And that might be in different environments too. Like maybe you're in different groups. One team's killing it and the other's not.
Correct.
And pinpointing how can we grow, right?
Yeah, remember, just all a bunch of high performers doesn't necessarily mean the team's effective. You gotta find. There's other reasons why, right, that those teams are successful. So, yeah.
I think you see it too in different examples as well. Even in like sport teams, right? You have all these
Absolutely.
superstars and they can't win, right?
Correct.
They never, and you're like, they have all the talent in the world, but yet this team that's working together better has probably that psychological, because if they're not afraid to make mistakes, or that coach that supports them,
Correct. Yeah.
go out and kill it. And so it's just so interesting.
I would say actually that is 100% a great analogy to kind of look at the transferability of it, kind of not just in the working world, but those high performing stars that just can't figure it out and what's the reason, what's the culture like, and I think that's a great way of rephrasing it. It can bleed into multiple areas of your life for sure.
Yeah, definitely. We talked about personal example already. What tips do you have when it comes to building a culture, helping establish that through virtual communication or virtual time? I know that's really prevalent now, more than it probably would have been a decade ago. And so obviously the pandemic kind of accelerated that, and some folks are still back in the hybrid zone or back in person. But it's such an important piece of a team no matter what, right? Especially too, I'm thinking like maybe students aren't doing virtual stuff, but in the future in their careers might be, or just in the future here as well, right? Or
I mean, I'm fully remote, so I get it. It's it's the future.
Person to ask, right? Like, how do you do that? In that virtual, to still simulate or get some of that in person, because it's just so different. Like,
it is
not bad or better, but just like different, right? And so how do we How do we do that?
So, okay, that in-person conversation or kind of getting to know your team, that camaraderie that exists within a physical space is removed, right? When you are not in a remote, or where you're in a remote world. So I will tell you that it is harder. It is more difficult, right? There's more challenges presented to you if you are leading a team remotely. I right now we're a team of 2, so I can tell you that that's a little easier, but I work with individuals who have teams of 30 that are throughout the entire country, right? And so it's fascinating to talk to them about how they do try to achieve that kind of still safe space or connection. So a couple things that come to mind just right away are what I talked about earlier, the high social sensitivity, the nonverbal reading. So in a remote space, and again, I would say where my job now, culturally, it's like a 50% camera on, camera off kind of a culture, depending on the meeting itself that folks are in, right? So the consultants I work with do have some expectations with clients, right? Like we're camera on for obvious reasons when they're working with a customer. But during like even some of my trainings that I have, or I know some of their team meetings because I've asked, they have their cameras off. So I work really hard to share why that is important to have them on during our in-person trainings and how that creates a different experience for everyone. That for me, it's better for me to be able to read your nonverbals and to see you interacting and engaging or not, right? Like, am I boring you to death? Am I not? So help me help you, essentially, is kind of the plea I throw out at the beginning of most sessions. So that I know it seems simple, but really trying to instill a sense of like, we're a camera on type of a culture, I think is a great way, because again, without those nonverbals, you're really losing a lot. Especially again, if you're thinking of psychological safety, that was the main norms that were recognized as an important piece, is to be able to recognize when folks are exhibiting that. And so, or are positive or negative. And so my very maybe simple, but I feel like goes a long way suggestion is instilling a camera on culture if you are in a remote world or in a remote meeting, oftentimes with your group or your team, whoever it is. The other thing that I think about is creating, again, that sense of that connection and checking in. So a big piece of psychological safety that we haven't really talked about yet is, again, we've talked about feedback, but that you're, again, creating that space for the feedback by checking in. And so whether that's as a group, right, when you have your week team meeting or however often is that you meet, that you're asking those check-in types of questions, those open-ended questions, to, again, invite folks to share, to create that space that's happy. You're not together all the time, right? You're not side by side in offices. You can't just casually say, hey, boss, blah, 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 this happened today or whatever. It's easier to have that, right, that quick interaction when you're physically by someone than when you're in your basement room and working. And so making intentional check-ins happen to present, again, opportunities for feedback, or just in general to check in, or just to share not work-related things, right? To kind of create a more informal feeling, a sense of camaraderie, like I said, virtually. That's a big piece of that. And so spend the first 3 to 5 minutes of the meeting doing that, like having a check-in, having a casual conversation about not work-related things. I would even go as far as saying, as much as I feel like people turn their nose up to it, and I wouldn't even say icebreaker, if you have an engagement question, right, at the beginning of a meeting that just gets people talking, you're going to create at least some type of sense of connection that they're going to feel, which helps you in the long run, even if them hating it together is going to bring them together, great. Right. So they'll at least bond over that. But again, I think as much as people sometimes turn their nose up to having that, it really does, I think, help once people do jump in and kind of put that aside, that frustration aside that we have to do this. But if you do it in a more natural setting, I feel like, or make it more natural seeming than like, we're going to do an icebreaker. I think that helps, especially more in a professional world. But again, even in student-led groups, I think that's important to just infuse kind of that into your natural flow of any kind of meeting. So that the checking in and then that feedback is big, as well as, again, making sure you can see people's faces. I'm a big proponent of that.
Love that. Camera on culture.
Camera on culture.
Do you have like a go-to engaging question you ask, or some good ones that might kind of draw that out and to have people kind of feel comfortable and invite them to share things? Or
I don't really like sometimes, and
Feel
again,
silly sometimes?
I do feel like I mean, as you know, I have the gift of gab, so I generally feel like I'm pretty comfortable with just having casual conversations with folks in meetings that I have often. And again, it's different with me. It's only a team of 2 right now but when I have meetings with other people often, like the same group, it's a pretty easy for me at least to make those connection points. And thankfully everyone has their camera on. So check, that already is done in a lot of those meetings. But yeah, I don't have a go-to. I think I did this with you the last time when I talked about psychological safety. People like to say, how do you, like, we have an agenda, right? Or a to-do list. And I read once, like, we're not human doings, we're human beings, right? And so I do sometimes ask individuals at the beginning of a training session at least, which I think, though, you could do it in any meeting that's meant to be informative or like idea sharing or brainstorming, some type of result of a meeting, is how you want to be in this meeting, right? So go through the agenda, go through your to-do list, but then shift and say, okay, that was our to-do list, but how do you want to be? Like, how do you want to show up today? If you ask people to think about how they want to show up to a training or a meeting or any type of scheduled something, that creates that little bit of accountability, right? If you make them type it in a word cloud, right? Or type it in some type of poll that you can do. If it's virtual, if they write it down some way, or maybe you just make them write it down in a meeting, right? If you are physically together. But that, I think, then they're more likely to stay to that, right? If I say, I'm going to be present, or I'm going to engage, or I'm going to be open-minded, they're a lot more likely to do that because they wrote it down, which seems, again, simple, but there's that accountability piece because they wrote it down or they typed it or whatever. So how do you want to be instead of how do you want to do?
I like that. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of on this a little bit, but I've heard all this different advice around leadership and showing up on teams and kind of nerding out about this stuff as we do.
Nerding out,
really
yep, it's fine.
And one thing I've always really appreciated, I believe it was Simon Sinek who said this, and I remember it was in one of his books, a video, probably in both. Love Simon Sinek. Definitely check him out if you don't know that, as we talked about him before. But talked about a leader's job, practicing the art to speak last, right? And so when you come into, for example, a team meeting, right? And oftentimes we see like a manager or leader, someone with that power coming and just like, laying it out and then asking the team, well, what do you think? And then that can honestly create some of that lack of psychological safety, right? Because people are like, whatever you said, boss, you're, that CEO blindness, whatever the million buzz phrases you want to use.
Correct.
Right? So how does a leader maybe come in and create that environment, but still practice that? And
Sure.
It maybe just like, is it like, asking and then just taking that back and listening, or how does that look?
Yeah, I guess for me, I would just call it as it is, right? Like, I know that I am, right, whatever the role is, I'm the leader of the group, the boss, is whoever it is. But I want to flip the switch, right? I want to hear from all of you. I don't want to talk. I want to make sure that you all feel like your voice is important. I want you to be heard. I value your opinions and, your own experiences that you bring to the table. So instead of me sharing, I want to hear from you first. There's also that concept too, right? That if folks are able to, if one person shares and then another can build onto that person's idea, right? That idea of like, we came up with this concept together as a group, oftentimes that then leads to more buy-in, right? From the group collectively, because they kind of all contributed to some way or to some level to whatever it is that they were facing, whatever the problem or the whatever they were working on. And so I think, I guess for me, because I've always been someone that, I kind of I call it like I see it. I am who I am. Like, take it or leave it, right? Like, I'm going to show up. So I would tell you that for me, I would likely just say, I talk enough. I want to take a minute and step back and hear from all of you. That might not be everyone's style. I feel like you could do that in your own way. Again, it could just be as easy as asking the right open-ended question at the beginning of a meeting to hopefully, even if everyone doesn't talk, maybe a few people will be more comfortable to start, and then hopefully that could be contagious and kind of go throughout the group. You kind of can find those culture champions, I guess. I don't know, to lack of a better term. Those individuals maybe you'd want to even start by calling out someone like that you feel like might be comfortable to share, right? So, well, hey, Brandon, we haven't heard from you, or what are your thoughts on this, right? If there may be like an internal leader within the team, that is something that maybe you could set the stage then for your peers. So I think if the leader of the group is able to maybe then call out and know the people that could then within their team kind of get that started, that could be a great strategy too. Again, maybe I would do that too, but I would just call it like it. Personally, I would just call it like it is and say, I don't want to talk. I want to hear from all of you because you all, my own philosophy on leadership, again, from when I worked at Target through when I was running orientation to now, is I know I'm not the expert in this all the time. When I came in and started supervising the success coaches, I was never a success coach. I've worked a lot with students and felt like I understood how to work with the success coach team and to help students get the help and support that they needed in different ways. But I leaned a lot on saying, like, tell me what you know, what is important, tell me what your experiences are. And I think that helps, again, build trust and shows, again, that you're willing to say, I don't know the answer all the time as the leader. I feel it. And that's, again, I've taken that with me from, again, when I was a 22-year-old at Target, being like, I don't know how to put the socks on this rack, right? Like, show me expert who's been here for 20 years, who's 20 years older than me, and now I'm your boss. Like, I feel like I really do feel like I did a great job, especially, again, as a 22-year-old, of building a trusting team of these. My team was mostly actually female staff when I was at Target, but I was able to, again, I think, create a lot of trust coming in because I let them show me how to do it, right? Let them take the lead and trust in their abilities. So again, I think that would be, I think, what a leader could or should do to kind of get that ball rolling.
No, that totally makes sense. And I think even maybe like shifting that perspective of like, like you're just kind of starting that out and then shifting that role more of that facilitator idea of, right, how to like continue the conversation along, right? If there is that pause and noticing those things, but also like being fully present and giving your team members a chance to listen.
Correct.
That's hard for a lot of people to do, right? That's another learned skill. Takes a lot of work, especially when you get excited or you want to contribute. But like, I think sometimes the best ideas usually come from when you're in that collaborative space, right? When people are all sharing their ideas, working together. And that never happens if you have one person or a couple dominating the conversation.
100%.
Then you get into groupthink sometimes too, right?
Correct.
Some people just like, yep, we're gonna do this, and it's
correct.
Like, well, what about here? And so
and then
it comes in balance, right?
And then again, it goes to the conversational turn taking. Like, are there people that aren't getting a chance to speak? And so with the whole the leaders speak last concept, I think a huge piece of that, and I don't remember, he probably does talk about it, Simon Sinek, but a piece of psychological safety that I feel like relates to that, which we also haven't talked about yet, is active listening. People, again, I just had a conversation with my 9-year-old daughter about how hearing is different than listening the other day, and so her direct quote, so are you telling me that I'm a better listener than some of the people that you work with? I was like, sometimes, it depends, right, on if you're able to fully engage. And so part of active listening is not allowing people to interrupt, right? Like, let that person or you not interrupt, but also making sure you're setting the culture to not let other people interrupt the person speaking. So actively, when you're opening up the door to speak last, you need to also make sure you're not just zoning out, that you're at least involving yourself to the level that they also think that you are actually listening, or that the group collectively is actively listening to what you're saying. They're open-minded, they're engaged, they're asking kind of follow-up questions. They're not, this is the one I struggle with, admittedly, which I still am working on, area of growth, is the whole concept of like thinking of what you're going to say in response before they actually get done talking. Super hard for me to do, but I've been really trying hard to work on that, right? It's an area that I know my brain just goes a mile a minute, and I need to just pause and be like, nope, listen to what they have to say, and then respond.
I gotta say, the podcast really helps with that. Sometimes I'm like, what's the question? Or this thing popped up, you just made a good point, and I'm like, but then present, right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So it might help. I don't know. But active listening, I think if you're going to open up the floor to your team to speak before you, then you need to also make sure that you're doing your job of making sure that they also know that you're engaged and actively listening.
You made such a key point there too. Like, if you are taking more of that, like not backseat approach, but just taking, away from the spotlight or speaking, like to not zone out, right? Making sure that those folks feel heard, valued, because that's a huge part, again, connecting to psychological safety, right?
Correct.
Like they want to make sure that you're invested in them and involved, especially if you're in that leadership role or in that position to lead that team. And so, really big point that you hit on, I think folks need to hear again. So,
and that is also, I mean, admittedly, I have to work on that too, right? Your brain can go drifting, and you got to make sure, if I ask someone a question, stick around for the answer, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't think about this other thing over here,
Right.
which I think we're all guilty of. But
yeah, I think it happens a lot in our fast-paced
Yeah.
life, especially.
Correct.
Like you talked about, especially in the States, like the culture.
Yes.
And work. It's like, sometimes I think we say like we genuinely want to be like, polite or kind, like, and I think the big one is always like, how's it going, or how are you, and then they're like good, and then you just kind of keep walking by, right? It's like,
Yes.
well, I feel like if you ask a question, start saying like, I struggle with that too at times.
Yeah,
It's tough, right?
it is.
Because you want to be like, I'm interested, but then there's so many distractions, and I think we do live in a really distracted
100%.
environment all the time, especially so many things going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that can help too, being present, is limiting distractions.
Yeah.
And a big time, and people are not gonna like this and struggle with it too sometimes, is cell phones, right? Or email, right? Muting those notifications. Putting stuff away when you're in a meeting, right?
Yeah.
Not just on the table or right here, like put out of sight, right? So you can really kind of
Correct.
those connections. It's tough.
There's I was just listening to an audiobook actually, and anyway, it's a whole other topic, but it's fascinating. But one of the topics that was being discussed, and I forget the percentage, but the point that the author was trying to make was like, when a phone is actually just physically present, so like if that phone is just there, the amount of distraction that creates for both, even if it's my phone, for both me, the person who owns a phone, but also you, who knows that any minute when we're talking that this could go off, and then I'm going to get distracted and not be paying attention to you anymore. So like just the sheer point, or the sheer act of like laying your phone on a table in a meeting creates already a distraction and almost a barrier for that group to kind of collectively come together and be fully present. So again, this was also about, this was a completely different book, or about not psychological safety, but I think that concept is true in a variety of settings, and that act in and of itself doesn't help anyone. And I didn't think about this. For virtual work to work, I think that's a huge thing too, that you need to make sure that people please be distraction free. And I do say that the expectation of this training or this meeting, right, is that everyone's fully engaged, that you're not working on other projects. It's so tempting, right, in a remote world, especially if you have two screens, to have the meeting up in one and the other thing up in the other, and you can still work and do things and be 20% engaged. And fun fact, multitasking is not real, right? We all say we multitask, but in fact, not a thing. Not something that your brain can actually do effectively.
Right.
Your effort or your output of whatever the multiple things you're working on is significantly reduced when you're trying to do multiple things at once, which includes, of course, being engaged in a meeting if you're also checking your email, right? So, so I had to go back to that because you made me think of that. But yeah, phones and distractions are a huge piece of also allowing yourself to actively listen, which goes back to, again, making sure people feel like they can talk and that you care. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like it also just kind of sends a signal, even if it's not intentional, which I don't think many people do, that this conversation is not as important, right? Or just there's something else going on. And again, we're all guilty of doing that.
100%.
It's hard, right? There's a lot of things to balance, right? Going on, and that's not to say if there's an emergency or something like that, right? Most people are gonna understand, but even just trying to remove that, I think can help. Yeah. Again, go into relationship building. That was a really nice tie-in to the virtual space.
It's hard.
It's hard.
I'm guilty of it.
Yeah, it's so easy to get distracted.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I have to make a conscious effort to not. And I'll admit to you, I would say 80% of the time, if I'm in a meeting that I'm not leading, I'm probably doing other things. Which, again, I'm admitting that I do that because I know it's an area of growth, but in a remote world, that's, I think, a big challenge for a lot of us. Yeah.
I struggle with working at home because I'm like, oh, look at all this stuff, right? And I'm so you need that workspace. But everyone's different. So. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But no, so interesting on that.
It is. It's fascinating.
Multitasking.
Yes, right. It's not real. Multitasking is not real.
Put that on their resume back in the day. That was before I was around, kind of.
No.
I'm a great multitasker. It's like, that says is.
It's not real.
Even too, even when the device, I remember I was learning something. This is a while ago. I don't remember, study, so, psychologists on it, but it's something about like they call it the residue effect, where it's like
Okay.
if you like, let's say you're working right on a project,
Mm-hmm.
and you take your phone out, you look at something for even like 10 seconds, a short amount of time, it might have been longer.
Yeah.
You put it away. It was something crazy like now you're 20%, like a decent amount of percentage. I don't remember the numbers. Now when you go back to that task, you're distracted because your mind is still over here,
Yep.
or over here in this way.
Yes.
And so like that's so crazy how fast that like when you were zoned in, it can instantly be taken away, especially in the environments we have.
Yes.
And so that goes in the conversation like how productive are we really being? We sometimes feel we're being productive because we have 3 things going on. We're doing things, but again, we're not putting our full attention on them. So are we really being more productive, or are we causing ourselves more work?
Correct.
Ideally, right?
Yeah.
We're doing more small things, I think, but like, are they the quality we're looking for?
Correct. That's
and I know
where
that's such an interesting dynamic, and something I think folks, self-included, like need to think about more, right?
Yeah.
Especially when we're being present. So
yeah, and I think the same goes even like again with that distraction. Like think of how many, the same book I was talking about, how many notifications, especially young people. Like I'm not that cool. I'm not that young anymore, so I don't have all the apps,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
But for someone who is in high school or even in college, right, the amount of notifications in a day that you get.
Yeah.
That's what those companies are trying to do, is get your attention, right?
Yeah.
Like they know that. And there's a lot of conversation about that too. But the sheer, again, act of you carrying around your phone, knowing and how distracted you even are just in general, like knowing if I just made this Instagram post, are people liking it right now? Like that in and of itself, like you're already distracted because you're thinking about that piece. Anyway, I think that, yes, to bring it full circle, those distractions are getting even harder for us to create maybe some of these spaces that we're talking about, because just culturally, technology, all these different advances that we're making are definitely creating a few more extra steps that we need to take to make sure that we're committing to being and creating those spaces intentionally and trying to be, set aside all those things that are going to make it harder for us. Like you said, make more work. You're making more work for yourself. So.
Which is like, and that technology piece, like it's such an amazing tool, right? Like the possibilities that things can do now. Like I mean, this is being filmed on an iPhone right now.
Right.
Like, that's cool, right? Like, and so stuff like that, you can just upload it from the phone, which will use a computer, but like to YouTube, right? It's instantly like that stuff is so powerful and so going, and makes your life easier. But it's when it's out of balance.
Correct.
Like anything.
Yeah.
And exactly that distraction is like, or the distraction when you're walking around. It's like, I mean, let's be real, like. We're addicted to our phone.
Oh,
like
100%.
You know what I mean? It's just, and that's a whole different topic.
It really
We
is.
go so deep into that.
Maybe I'll be a third timer, and we'll talk about that later.
We should. 100%.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just so interesting. So
it is.
But going back to that, like being present is so important, and just connecting and the active listening piece is huge. And it's a skill, right? It's
oh
okay
my
if you're not
gosh.
there yet. Like, it takes work every single time.
Work on a part of it, right? Like start small. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
And those small conversations, like. Even probably the best active listeners still have to consciously work at it, right? So,
if I had to tell an individual, if I had to pick personally like an area for active listening, if someone's like, I'm not a good active listener, if you can call that out, first of all, great job identifying that as an area for growth. But if I had to pick, I guess I would say 2. One of the easier, I feel like, well, maybe not easy. I feel like one that should be easy is being open-minded, right? Even though you don't think about that in terms of active listening, which I will tell you, again, I know that sometimes I lack in this area myself, but I feel like for individuals to at least go into that conversation, especially again if it is a feedback session or a brainstorming session or something like that, that active listening, the open-minded piece of active listening, which is I think hard that people forget about in active listening, like in terms of the bulleted list of things that's needed for active listening. I feel like open-mindedness sometimes might be not as prioritized, but I think that's a huge one, right?
Yeah.
Because then if you aren't, right, then you're more likely to shut down and not pay attention, or to respond negatively, or to not respond at all, right? So that I think is the gateway into, if you will, trying to open up the rest of your active listening skills. So that one, and then the other one, of course, which is just the engage piece, right? Like the one I told you that I'm really bad at, and many people are, right? Like engage and don't respond in your brain before they're done talking. Those are, I think, the 2 areas to start. And like the interrupting thing, that'll come, right? To not interrupt and to ask those open-ended questions. I think those naturally will come if you're doing the other 2 things successfully. So those would be my 2 active listening starting points if someone feels like they could grow in that area.
Sure. Thanks for adding those 2. I definitely agree. Like I think the open-mindedness piece is highly underutilized
Yes.
and valued,
Mm-hmm.
and so important, and that connects to anything.
It does.
Once you close your mind off, it's game over, right?
Yeah.
And get stuck in your own opinions. You
Yeah.
learn, it's what's that quote? It's like you can learn something new from every single person you meet, right?
Yeah.
Because we're all, we have all different interests. We all have different experiences around things.
Yes.
And I think another skill that's so important, a piece to active listening, is learning how to ask quality questions, which you kind of touched upon a little bit
Yeah.
about, like how a leader could do that. It's so important, and that curiosity piece, right?
Yeah.
'Cause it's going to draw out so much information, but also reinforce or show that you are coming to the conversation, hopefully with
Correct.
individuals. And so
Yeah.
learning how to ask a question is also a skill. It's
It
gonna be
is.
challenging, but I think also the more that it's again connected, the more you tap into your own growth and learning, the more questions you probably have, or the more things you can talk about with people, which makes it easier as well.
Correct. And I would say that all of this goes back to one of those norms, like that quality conversation or quality in conversation, turn taking. Like that is what we're talking about, right? Like when you're active listening, you're paying attention to that, right? You're engaging, you're listening, you're making sure everyone is being heard. You're listening to what they're saying, you're calling on the people, you're asking the right questions to get those involved that aren't currently involved, right? And so I think that's showing why like that norm is so important. It's more than just saying like, yep, everyone can talk, everyone has, it's a little bit deeper than that. And I think we're kind of hitting on all the reasons. We're kind of showing what those reasons are right now, with that engagement and the active listening and drawing people in with the right questions and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Love it.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about psychological safety, and a big piece of that piece is having people feel comfortable speaking up, especially addressing mistakes,
Yeah.
things that they're uncomfortable with. We touched a little bit upon it. You gave a couple examples earlier in terms of a hypothesis of why maybe some leaders don't do this well. There's such a I want to say fallacy around leadership in society that a leader is needs to be tough and aggressive at times, and really that power kind of over dynamic we see in terms of that position of power, right, amongst people, which really obviously creates that downward spiral. And it's always it seems like people are like, that's how you're successful, you drive results. Well, maybe for a short period of time, but over time has so much research, so much things that destroy organizations. Organizations collapse because of that. And so how can someone who maybe is experiencing some of that maybe doesn't have that power per se in that role to do that, to kind of push and change that narrative amongst that space to help team members feel comfortable in space? So maybe you're thinking for example, this might help, you have say manager of team, team, usually there's leaders in every level of organization. A lot of the times it's that maybe those general workers, just because that person's power doesn't mean they're a leader, right? We've talked about that a bunch on the show too. Yeah. That positional leadership piece, I think people really focus on a lot as well. But on that general level, how can those team members kind of push that narrative and try to create that environment for them? Because I think honestly, working, that should be kind of a right in the organization. We spend so much time in our careers of being cared for it and taking care of one another. So how can folks do that? What are some strategies?
So if I'm understanding your question correctly, as I'm active listening, I'm going to paraphrase back to you, right? Make sure I get what you're saying. So, are you asking me if the leader themselves, the team is going to have to unify to help? Is the leaders the issue here? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say probably that person that is in that role, and there's that lack of psychological safety right now.
Yep.
But how can people kind of take that personal empowerment to push against that narrative?
Sure.
Talk a little bit about any other suggestions or tips on how to do that, because obviously there's going to be fear that leader might lash out in a way, right, if they push against some mistakes, but it might need to be done. So what
Correct.
can we do here?
So I think something that would be really powerful, which again, going back to that quote I shared earlier, positive change doesn't happen when someone does everything. It happens when everyone does something. If the issue is the power dynamic, right, or that the leader, the supposed leader, right, supervisor, whoever it is, right, sure, right, the person in charge, right, is lacking. I think if I would argue, I would think that if a group collectively recognized that, and they themselves started to push back together to do the things that we were talking about together, right, that they're demonstrating within the group that conversational turn taking, that they're demonstrating that high social sensitivity of nonverbals and at least calling it out on one another. My hope is that individual that is the supervisor will start to recognize that maybe, right? Like I would be hopeful that that would be at least be somewhat effective to get maybe some, maybe minor behavioral changes from that individual. I would venture to say that if the group is, again, kind of a unified front in this effort, if they're able to feel, again, which they might not, but I would venture to say most of the things that I would think that they could talk about shouldn't result, right, in any kind of retaliation or negative consequences in terms of like their position being, in trouble, or their role, like them being let go or whatever. And so I would encourage folks to think about what the real repercussions are. Like, is this a risk, even though it might be really terrifying? Are you really worried about losing your job?
Yeah.
I hope not. If that's the case, then I would say you probably do need to go above the person in charge, right? But if it's more just a culture within the team, that if the group comes together to the supervisor to share, this is what we're experiencing and or what we're feeling or what our concerns are together, at least they have that, right? They have that collective piece where they're able to share both individually but like that they're also coming in as a group to say XYZ needs to change because we're not motivated, right? Or the morale is terrible. My hope is even if someone that's coming without a lot of, again, that leadership ability that is in charge of the folks will at least have a chance to hear it, right? Mm-hmm. They might not receive it well. They might take them a little bit of time for it to process through and for them to make some kind of behavioral changes. But I guess I'm a big advocate of, again, that team piece of it, that if you can come at it at least together, like the one person, that's probably a risk that you don't want to take. But if you can kind of unite and come together as a group without ambushing, right, without not putting them on the defense, coming at it more matter-of-factly with kind of your actual evidence, right, or your presenting your case for what is happening and what you're seeing and what's the results of that. I think I would hope, again, this might just be the optimist in me, right? Hope dies last, that's what they always say, that I would hope that individual would at least have a somewhat of an aha moment, right, to realize, because that's a reflection of them, right? Yeah. And so I would even be willing to say, like, if we aren't performing well, then that's going to be a reflection on you, right? And so, not in a threatening way, but just in a matter-of-fact way. So, I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for. I feel like that is tough. I will admit to you that that's a tough situation if you are in a group that is recognizing that the leader the supervisor, you're right, we shouldn't say leader, that the person in charge is the issue. There's only a certain amount of avenues or ways you can handle that. Yeah. But I do think that United Front is at least a starting point versus one person feeling like they're coming in, that everyone together can kind of share how it's impacting them.
For sure.
I would hope. But that's a part of it, right? Like culture I talked about earlier and that power that exists and how cultures view power. Like that individual reflecting back might have come from some type of position or role or job before, or just grew up however they grew up, with a lot of power distance, right? Yeah. That the person in charge is authoritative and makes the decisions, and we go with what they say, versus it being an open dialogue and everyone at all levels has a willingness to or ability to share and contribute. And so, if it even lets them recognize that, right? That this is just a learned behavior that I've been kind of accustomed to and just kind of maybe they didn't even realize they were doing it, right? So again, that's the hopeful piece of me, is that I would like to think that at least someone would have an aha moment to a degree. But again, I wish I had a better answer for you for that. But admittedly that's a tough situation.
Hopefully no one's
and I hope that no one's really in that situation.
It's still reality, and I think that answer does kind of actually help provide insight to that, the idea of bringing kind of going to that empathy mindset, okay, maybe they haven't heard this feedback before. Maybe that's how it was modeled to them when they were in this role, right? Maybe they didn't receive the training, and then finding ways to, now again, like you said, don't ambush them, right? Or come up, it's just gonna put them, like you said, on the defense,
correct?
And stuff like that is so important. But maybe giving that person that opportunity to learn, and then I think if things continue to be negative or it's not as safe ways, and you got to ask yourself that question. And again, it comes if you have that privilege and the opportunity. Do I see myself being here? Right?
Correct.
Am I valued? And that's okay too. And I think sometimes people get really caught up in that because maybe it's a job you really wanted,
Yeah.
or that career. Like sometimes I know too, it looks hard to take a step back, take a leap forward because
Yep.
we're in a judgment world, right? Everyone's gonna be like, "Why'd you leave? You had everything going right way."
Yep.
And stuff like that. But sometimes that's needed for your well-being too. and
Correct.
That's
You
okay,
got it.
right?
100%.
And I hope more people start to value that idea of because we spend so much time in our careers, right? In the
Yeah.
place of work that it's some place that values you as an employee or
Correct.
contributor, and that you also enjoy what you
Well,
do.
yeah.
Right?
Think about one of those questions, right? Are
Yeah.
my unique skills being valued and utilized, right?
There you go. Yeah,
If the
exactly.
answer to that is no, and you feel like you can't fix it, then yeah, I think you need if you can have the option and that privilege to explore
Yeah.
other options, then that might be your best choice. As much as, again, that might be your last choice, right?
Yeah.
After trying a few other avenues or
Exactly,
different
right.
approaches.
Maybe don't do that right off the
Yeah,
bat,
maybe don't
but
instantly just do that, but
maybe it's a transfer into a different team in that organization.
Sure.
Or something.
Correct.
And,
Yeah.
and things like that. But
Yeah.
there's ways to go
But
about
that's a tough situation.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I won't sit here and say that there's a magical answer to that one for sure.
it. It really isn't, right? Because that situation's probably a little bit different.
Yeah.
And why that person's the way they are. and
Correct.
everything, so.
Correct. And again, they might have just gotten that job because they
They were-
were good at processes, and right, they didn't hear the feedback before because they never led people before. So yeah.
Exactly. So what tips do you have for leaders to help find that balance between challenging team members, but also still, making them feel safe in an environment? Because I think, it's obviously very important. A part of the role is lead to, hopefully help their followers, people they're working with,
Mhm.
to say that, reach their potential,
Yeah.
and challenge them. But how do we do that without coming off too challenging or too difficult? And because I think there is a balance here, and I mean, it might come back to knowing the people you're with. I think
Yeah.
we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But is there any other insight that you have, or going deeper on that?
I would say I think that check-in piece is important. Like I mentioned earlier, but I think I was talking more in terms of like a group check-in. I think it's important for you to have that type of check-in with your individual employees. I would venture to say, right, most people at probably most organizations likely don't do a performance review correctly, right? If you're leading a group or a person the right way, a performance review is just semantics, right?
Yeah.
The conversation should be a yearly long, ongoing, performance-based, how can I help you grow? Where are your areas of growth? Whatever it might be, kind of conversation. And so I think in order for you to create that safe space and to also challenge, yes, you need to make sure that one, that you're instilling again that sense of vulnerability, and then from you, like modeling that you can grow with me, right? Like we're growing together. We're going to learn and grow at the same time and make mistakes, and that's okay. But I do think that individual connection is a huge piece of that, right? You probably can't challenge someone to grow and to learn professionally without having that one-on-one connection with them. I'm not saying you have to hang out every day, right? But you need to make that effort to have a connection piece or point with them because, yes, you want to create that psychological safe environment in like a team setting where everyone's together. But obviously when you're one-on-one, it's maybe even more important to know that they can ask you those questions or that you can ask them questions to challenge them without them feeling judged or like they're in trouble or whatever it might be. So I think that's for me, that's what I again have tried to do, and I've been in charge again of more than one person or been trying to lead more like a group is having that connection with each person because it is different for everyone, right? You can't cookie cutter and blanket the same generalization across everyone or generalize and say this is going to work for everyone because we all know that that's not going to work. I think if you're one-on-one check-ins are intentional and effective, that you're able to do that and have that kind of challenge, pushing them, calling them out, right, and in a professional way for them, again, because if you have a psychologically safe environment, they're going to see it as a way to grow, right, and that to learn, not that you're just calling them out to call them out, right?
Absolutely.
Generally, when people criticize, right, generally when people give feedback, their intent, generally, I know there's some outliers. Generally, when people give feedback, the intent is not for them to make you feel like crap, right?
Yeah.
Their intent is to help you grow. I will tell you that some people don't probably give the feedback in the most effective way to make you receive it that way. So I will also add that tidbit. But generally speaking, when feedback is being given, it's meant to be for improvement, which is a really hard thing for your brain to recognize because you feel it here first, right?
Yeah.
Generally, your brain is more likely to jump to that ouch, that sucks, I'm hurt kind of piece if you're getting a difficult feedback. But again, if that supervisor or that leader of you has created that space where you know that feedback is meant as a positive intention, then I'm hopeful that you can challenge them all you want, right? And it will help them be better.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
Great.
So, if you give one piece of leadership advice, what would it be?
I think I'm going to go back to my tried and true, what I talked to you about earlier, is that don't be afraid to let your team take the lead, right? Don't be afraid to let them show you how to do something because they've proven to you that they know what they're doing and that you can trust in their abilities. I think that just goes a really long way, and it helps you there's a lot. The outcome of that, the result of that is multiple fold, right? It's not even twofold. You're building trust. You're making them feel valued. You're making them feel, again, that they're important and respected and that you trust in their abilities. Like you're helping with their confidence. You're helping make a connection, right? There's so many positive things that come from that. Maybe hard for some people, but again, for me, I feel like that's just something that I guess have taken pride in, the fact that I'm not going to let my own pride, right, get in the way of saying I'm the boss. I should know all the things. I'm not going to ask for your help or your insight. I think that honestly, if you have a starting point, if you're with a group, especially if you're brand new, if you can build the team right yourself, right, that's different. If you are the person that built the team, right, you naturally have that affinity. They have that affinity for you, right? Like they picked me. They saw something in me already, right? But if you're taken from here and plopped into here, and now you are the boss of this people or this group or this group of students or whoever it might be in this new project or this whatever the thing is that you work on, your role together. That's I think where that is even more important, right? That you need to make sure that you are saying, "Hey, I know I'm new to this. Right. You all have been here. Teach me something," right? Like I'm the student, you're the teacher. Ready, set, go. Yeah.
Two very different experiences, right?
100%.
Creating a team versus
joining
a team that's already kind of...
Yeah, and I've done both.
Yeah.
So yes, I will absolutely tell you that they're very drastically different experiences.
For sure. You're touching on a little bit when I was hearing is like the idea of empowering your people to do the work that they're there to do, right? And hopefully you've given them the opportunities to build those skills or they have those already. That key of delegation. But I see so many, and this is frankly just because of the population I work with, and I know it's not just with young adults, but that's who I primarily work with. I see it's so hard to do sometimes is to delegate things and to give up some of that. And it's just, are there any ways, because I get that question a lot too as well, and that's such a key piece of building a sustainable organization, especially when we look at, and again, the work that I do in the college, like people graduate, right? Yeah. They start something and leave and try to pass it down, and we see so many times these strong organizations or things, or that culture of leadership development not present. And I think it does come to like that leadership. And I'm also talking from personal experience too, right? I really struggled with that, knowing a lot of things and trying to delegate in a way, and there's so many different factors, but like other ways or things that leaders can do or it's individuals do to help with that, to build that skill? Or does it really just come with experience and just doing it more? I don't know,
Delegating is super tough, I think. Again, another area of growth for me. You could ask a couple people that I've been their boss for in the past. Because, again, depending on your own work ethic and those expectations and standards you set for yourself or for your work, right? Delegating means a couple things. You're giving up not only that control, right, over the way it looks, but delegating, to me, the biggest piece of it is the trust, right? Yeah. That trust that you have to have, that person or those individuals are going to give the same result, produce the same thing, right? Whatever it is that they're working on at the level that you set for yourself. And then you have to be okay with if they don't, right? And that's the hardest part for me because that's a reflection of you, right? If you are the leader of said group or organization or whatever it might be, and you're delegating tasks to other people, right? You're still going to be the person that the expectations are going to be set, right? For like the result, so the end result of whatever that you were working on. And so I think I guess personally for me, and I think probably many others, is that trust and expectations are where delegation, I feel like, is a super tough thing for many of us. I can admit myself. So I would say if you struggle at that, I think what I have done in myself in the past is to just literally think of the things that this sounds crass, that I care about the least in terms of if this doesn't go exactly the way that I need it to go or want it to look, or, end up the event to go the way I thought it would go, whatever it might be, do the people that experienced it and or the people that are seeing it or viewing it or whatever the product is, right, whatever the end result is, are they going to know any different between what I would have done it, how I would have done it, and the experience that they got from whatever the thing was, right? So
play like your own game in your mind.
I literally have to play that own game in my mind. Like, okay, it's kind of complex, but it's like, okay, which of these 5 things will people be none the wiser for, right? That they got this and I wanted it to be this, but it doesn't matter because this is fine, even though it's not how I would have done it. So part of that's giving up that control, right, and trusting that the person's still going to do it. It might not be the way that you wanted, but I honestly have started to try to do that. Like, okay, yep. I would know I would do it this way. You did it that way, and everything's fine. And the people that are looking at it are perfectly content with what, right? So it's still trusting in that person's ability, and knowing that they will have some kind of output of whatever it is they're working on, and that you need to decide which of those things, right, as a starting point at least. So you might not be willing to delegate all the things right away, but picking and choosing the things that you are okay with. It looking different or feeling different than what you would have done, but the audience that you're working with isn't going to know the difference, right?
I think that takes a lot of knowing yourself. Again,
correct.
Right? Like that self-awareness piece.
Yeah, you got to do a lot of reflecting. Yeah.
Because you're right. Obviously, ideally, we see when good leaders is present, right? Things go bad, no matter it's the leaders' fault. Take accountability for that. Things go well, distribute that credit throughout the team, right?
Yep.
Do a lot of people do that in those roles? Sadly, no. We
correct.
See that. Do people do that well? Absolutely, as well.
Yep.
And I wondered too if maybe assigning a metric to it. Cause do you know who John Maxwell is?
Yeah.
Big time author, leadership guy. I remember reading in one of the books. I don't remember what book it was, but talking about. If someone can do the job at the 80% of the level as you can, delegate it, right?
Yep.
Especially as you move up. And I think that can also be a framework. I don't know what 80% looks like or however that you make that up in your mind, but something again like that goes.
That's kind of what. Yes, that's basically
you're
what.
Comfortable that they can do a good enough job at it, delegate it, right?
Yep.
Because that's what's going to let them build their growth.
Correct.
So then they can get to it. Or it might be better, right? Delegating someone a new way that you never would have.
Correct.
Tried. So there's risk involved, right? But I think again, it all connects to psychological safety, right?
It really does.
Everything ties in, right? People feel comfortable.
They can contribute, learn and
together.
Fail and make mistakes. Right. Yeah, all of it is full circle. Yes,
and that might be a good way to also maybe start building that, repairing psychological safety by putting more trust in the people that are delegating things, right? Giving them those tasks.
Yeah.
And then, goes well, awesome. Doesn't go great, then giving that feedback or also that support and helping them grow that next level.
Yes.
Sometimes some people also are just not going to perform.
Correct.
That's a different experience as well. Right?
Correct, and that's a different conversation that you have to have, right? But yeah, John Maxwell did it say it way more articulately than I did. But yeah, that's basically what I do is make that rubric in my head. But I think all of that, boils back to psychological safety and delegating, and if you're able to do that, right, that those individuals then you need to give them the chance to grow and learn so they can one day, hopefully, right, see the potential in them to then be the boss too one day, right, or lead a group themselves. So, yeah, great job, John Maxwell, for making it sound more articulated than what I did, but more sophisticated a rubric where I'm just like, just do it in your brain. Yes. Yeah, no, but I love that, and I think that that all absolutely boils back to a psychological safe environment, 100%. Yeah.
Next question, we're getting to near the end of this, but. Okay, you have unlimited resources and time to build a training program or developmental experience for people. What are you putting into it? Like, what's the content you want to train on, and like how would you do it? There's so many versions.
Are they like a leader or like all levels of people?
Be anything. You could do all levels if you want. You got unlimited time and resources to do anything. Or another way of saying that, like, what are the most important skills and gaps you've noticed in your both and what you're doing now? It's a different industry, but also with young adults you've worked with and all that kind of stuff. Because I think you have a really nice, wide range of experience.
Yeah. Okay. Well, obviously, given what we're talking about today, I'm clearly a real advocate and proponent of psychological safety. So I would absolutely, you should also be. It's very important if you want a team that functions as they should or effectively.
As well,
correct. Identify the gaps and try to bring it together. So absolutely, I would do that. If I could, that would be 100% something I would make everyone learn about in especially leaders, right? But at the same time, groups as well. Or non-leaders, non-supervisors, I guess I should say. The other thing, which this might be out of left field. You might have not expected this at all. But something I think, at least I feel I've seen lacking in a leadership sense in multiple, again, my job now as well as when I was in higher ed, is onboarding and teaching people how to onboard effectively. Pre-boarding, like communicating with them before they start the job, starting that culture early, and including things when they're onboarding that don't assume that they know the things, right? Especially new professionals, right?
For sure.
But even a seasoned person coming from one job into a similar role but a different organization, the culture's still different. How does lunch work? How do break works? How does asking for time off work? Things that you think they'll just know because they've done it maybe, or again, a brand new person to the working world might not really know at all how that stuff works. So I really, really think onboarding is lacking in so many organizations in different ways at different levels. That those assumptions happen a lot. That people just think that they'll know, that individuals might not feel as welcomed or as connected as they should. Folks leave organizations at a higher level because they don't receive a positive, impactful onboarding, right? I don't know the numbers. Viewers, Google it. If Google onboarding statistics, I promise you they're out there. I think it was, I read one, it was like 69% of people are likely to stay at a position for longer than like 3 years or something if they have a positive onboarding. So like three quarters of people, right, are gonna stick around, which 3 years nowadays is like pretty long time. Like we're likely to change jobs now is more likely for people to change out jobs. So onboarding to me is super important, and I think a huge miss on many organizations from many leaders. Give them things to look at. Give them tools to go back to. If you're onboarding multiple people at once, terrific. Like they then collectively create their own little community within the community. I mentioned earlier that that culture champion. I think that's a huge piece too. If you have those people on your team that are already kind of like showcasing those expectations of your group and your team and effectively doing the things that you want everyone to do, right? That they're like the beacon of like, this is how we want everyone to kind of perform or to behave, whatever. Make those people hang out with those people, right? Make the new people hang out with those culture champions to kind of show them the way. There's lots of, I could talk to you. Onboarding also could be a whole other podcast.
We got to do it. It's so undervalued.
My
I
gosh.
was surprised by your answer, but that's so important.
It really is.
So overlooked.
It's very overlooked.
Sets the tone, right?
It's shocking to me. And here's the thing, back to what we were talking about, people that are now leading people that maybe were really good at processes, but not so much leading people, just might not even know how to do it, right? They don't even know how to streamline resources, right? Correct. And like people feel it when you wing it. Don't wing it. Like onboarding can't be winged. Winged? Is that even a word? You can't wing it. I'll have to go back to that. That made more sense grammatically. It can't be winged. It's felt like the new people know when you're just like, I didn't have time to prepare for you.
Right.
I don't have a computer for you. Like, there's so many things, again, and this is very much, you can tell me, like, speaking from experience, that is, if I had all the time and resources, and I would say everyone needs to learn how to do this effectively, because it's a huge miss. It's a way to set the standard right away. It's a way to get your current team to, like, bond with the new person. There's so many benefits to it, and it's a miss.
100%. Oh, that is so true.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate, isn't it?
It really
I mean,
is.
like, imagine that, right? You get a new job.
Yeah. Oh,
No
I don't need to
onboarding,
imagine it.
and you're right. No, like for me, but if you haven't experienced
But
it,
if you
it's
haven't,
like,
yeah, I'm happy for you.
Like, you get a job and you're like, I want to commit my, career, like this, I love this mission or whatever the vision the company has, and then they're like, hey, there's nothing there for you. Like, of course you're gonna be disengaged from the start, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not a good experience, but it's like so important.
True
It's
story.
like that first impression piece, right?
Oh,
Like,
what? Yeah.
With that.
They already made the first impression on you. You
Right.
hired them.
Exactly.
Right? Now you
Right.
need to make that first impression on them. Like, that role
Exactly.
flips.
100%. The
Um,
idea that you're interviewing the corporation.
100%.
organization's
Which you
own
can do
interview.
right during an
Yeah.
interview. You should be interviewing them, right? Like, we learn that while you're interviewing them.
But,
While
like,
the
they didn't
interview.
give you the generic, same,
Correct.
Same as the candidates, right?
Correct.
It's a short
It's a little
time,
bit of a
yeah.
facade, right, on both ends to a certain
Sure,
degree.
yeah.
Not a facade, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all paint that picture the way
Yeah.
that we want it to be painted.
Well, it's all rehearsed.
But yeah, that is a complete 180.
Yeah.
Like, you need to impress them, and
People aren't prepared for that. or
no, they don't know how
corporations.
to in many role. This is a true story. I had a job once. I showed up my first day, and my boss wasn't even there.
Like, how does that happen, right? Like, that's
Didn't get there till
why-
like 10:30 that day. I show up at 8:00, right? Like,
Yeah.
here I am, yay.
Yeah.
Not there. No, like, here's what I need you to do.
Yeah.
Like, there was no welcome, wasn't even there. And thankfully, right, like, I have, again, enough social skills to be able to,
Right.
like, interact and ask questions and kind of find, I knew a couple people that I could at least say, hey, person, like, do you know what I'm supposed to do, right? And, like, kind of managed, but, like, that was a terrible
Yeah.
first impression.
Sounds like a higher ed experience. No shade to the industry, but I think it was. Because we do that horrible in higher ed. Like, a lot of
It
not
was.
not
Yeah.
everywhere, not everything, in every department.
Correct.
But like in general sense, it's and but organizations do it too, right? HR.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
everywhere.
I'm seeing it
but
in my own organization now. Like, onboarding needs some TLC.
Yeah, that's okay, right? It's
Yeah.
just giving feedback, right?
Yeah.
Like, to improve it, and yeah, that's just such a unique priority shift that I
Yeah.
think is so important.
But as a leader, that's a
Yeah.
huge piece of you to,
100%.
yeah. Do you want to keep doing onboarding? Then do it right the first time, right?
Yeah,
Do you want
right.
to stop
Save so
doing
much
this?
time and
People will stick
resources.
around and you won't have to keep onboarding,
Right.
right? Yeah. Put the time and effort into it so
Exactly.
they stick around.
It's like everything seems so like common sense.
It
right?
really
we make
does.
it so much harder for ourselves.
We really do.
Because in the moment we don't see the investment in it, right? And I'm saying we
Yes.
and like people.
I
that,
get
like,
what you're saying.
Yeah, and,
Generally,
like,
yes.
Generally, yeah. But it's
Mhm.
like it's the same thing of like take care of your employees first, and they'll take care of everything else. Treat
Yes.
others right. No, you know what I mean? Like it's like what? And we make those things so complex, but in reality, and does it take a lot of work, energy, and time? Absolutely. Like the idea of like thinking about like if you're in a leadership position or role, you want to be a leader. It's a full-time exercise job you got going on.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a choice you make every day, right? But it's so important. Just thinking about it there, you're like, you might be like, man, I gotta invest time in these people. I have to know everything. Yeah, but like that's why it's so impactful when there is a strong, leader, someone who does those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I
all
talked
the
about
things,
onboarding
yeah.
for a long time, Bisco.
We gotta do. We'll schedule another episode. I want to know more about your.
I have
experience,
lots
but,
of thoughts on onboarding.
Yeah, it's so important, right? I mean, that even connects to like like you said, you have the skills, your social skills. Also, I forgot to mention earlier, communication background in your education.
Sure,
Like,
yep,
You couldn't tell. Know a lot about that, but like in that passion, but like. That's also, finding mentors, those things. Like,
Correct.
It does not come, that's can be challenging, scary, and for a lot of people, right? Especially in somewhere new. You don't know how things work. You don't want to step in the wrong spot.
Correct.
You get under the wrong person right away. It's bad. Not under, that's bad ways of saying that. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
You connect with the people that maybe you shouldn't be, but you
Get
don't
with the
know
wrong
better.
crowd. Yeah.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
Way better saying that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
You just don't know. So.
Yeah, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm onboarding. And I would also add, which is different than onboarding, psychological safety, onboarding, and empathy. Empathy/EQ, like just in general,
Yeah.
emotional intelligence.
Intelligence too, by the way, if you didn't know.
I feel like I have again worked with plenty of leaders, people in charge, and
Yeah.
non people in charge, right? Who lack that.
And you're like, what are you doing?
And accountability. Wow, I have a lot of things, I guess, now that you got me going, Brandon. Accountability also is a big one.
Program we said can cover it all, right? There's no unlimited resources. In time,
yeah, right. So
yeah.
Psychological safety, onboarding.
Curriculum
I really am. I'm gonna make a whole syllabus.
And the unfortunate thing is we should have that right in the world.
We really should. Yeah.
It's lacking. So.
Yeah, it is. But yes. I those would be some of my priorities: accountability, empathy, EQ, psychological safety, onboarding. There we go. That's my course.
That's awesome. What's one experience or lesson that has shaped how you think of leadership and building healthy teams or cultures? What's one experience or that you've had that has shaped that? Maybe your values around it or your experiences?
Sure. I'm gonna go back to what I was talking about a little bit before, about how I learned what not to do as a leader.
That's big.
Yeah. I had a supervisor once who you could tell didn't trust in the people that worked for them, which is not a good feeling to have.
For sure.
Or maybe trusted in some, but not everyone, for more favoritism. Yep, not for with no like evidence-based reason, right?
Yeah.
Just because. Yeah. Which is a terrible place to be in. When again, I'm not saying I'm perfect, but I know that I like work hard and I'm productive, right? Like I feel like I am. Yeah, I can. I'm not programmed to not do my job well, right? Like I have that expectation for myself, right? So anyway, so this person, besides that, stirred the pot, I guess, for lack of a better term. Almost looked for ways to like rile us up, and not in a like motivational way.
Right. Like,
maybe in a motivational way.
She said kind of thing.
Or like would almost share, right? So like when you're in a position of authority or have a leadership role, there's a reason why you get to go to some of those meetings and I don't, right? I don't need to hear some of the things that you hear at those meetings. That's why we're uninvited.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a derogatory, bad way, but like that's what leadership at different levels is for, because you are all talking probably about things some of the times that we don't need to know about, some of those details. And this person would like come back and talk about things that we shouldn't probably have known about when other people in those meetings were ridiculed or, right, like other leaders, hearing about how other leaders were getting, yelled at or whatever it might be. And it's like, nope, I don't, earmuffs, like I don't need to know that, right? So being mindful of what you share and don't share with, if you are leading a group. And I don't mean that from transparency is important, right? Like I call it like I see it. I'm usually generally pretty upfront and sharing with as much as I feel comfortable sharing with people that I'm leading. To the level,
gatekeep stuff, right?
Don't gatekeep, correct. But like there are certain things that for maybe their own, not protection, but like just their own general well-being, to keep people from freaking out or to keep people from having different judgments or biases happen or whatever it might be, like don't say some of the things. Yeah. And this person shared the things. And that was, it created just a very toxic, uncomfortable environment for many individuals.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. But I learned not to do that.
You learned not to do that. So it's one of those things, taking that like almost negative experience and learning from it and making it a positive one, right? Like looking at every experience like a learning moment, right? We talked about earlier, and like it's the part of that optimistic side of you probably.
I tried. If I was asked by some of my previous staff, like I can think of times that like the success coaches, right? Like when I was that was like a group of 11 at one point. Yeah. And like they would naturally ask questions about like happenings at the university or whatever, correct? Right. Or right? Naturally, right? Like everyone's curious about things happening, right? Or like I heard blah blah blah. What do you know? So it's not that I didn't want to share with them. I would find, and to the best of my ability, a way to answer their question to make sure that they felt like I could share something with them. But maybe there were still times that I didn't share all the things, right? Yeah. Or because for my own self, right, that I knew that I shouldn't, right? That it would be frowned upon for me to share the things, right? That this was a confidential thing that they didn't need to know or I was told not to share. But trying to at least give them enough to like make them feel satisfied with what they were looking for. So yeah, I learned from that other individual to like give them something, but you don't have to necessarily give them everything depending on the context. Yeah.
Which is tough sometimes too.
Yeah.
Especially when you want to be honest and transparent with your team.
Correct.
Like,
and when you have no filter like me sometimes.
Same.
So yeah. Yeah, area for growth.
This right now, she's like so true. Yeah. So
yeah.
Sweet. Thanks for sharing that experience.
Yeah.
So as you know, because you've been on the show before, we have a kind of a closing, you say tradition on the show.
I'm kind of nervous about it.
Do. And so where our previous guest gets to leave the next guest a question, not knowing who it is. And so our last guest left you a question, and then you get to ask our next question after that. But the question is for you: what makes you happy?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
You can go really
Snacks.
deep or really like seriously. It makes you happy, right? You go deep, you can go like more surface level.
Okay, I really am going to tell you that I don't know, I'm barely a social media person. Like I try, but I think one of my profiles I think says, maybe was my Twitter one, X. Is that what it's called now? See, that's how cool I am. I think I put on there, live to eat, not eat to live. Like Dan is an eat to live kind of guy.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna eat because I know I have to eat. But I like literally get excited about snacks and food. Like it really does make me happy. Yeah. Yes. So I know that seems seems very, but like, fun fact, like I get super pumped when I know I'm gonna like have a delicious meal, or like on vacation. Like what cool food what delicious dish am I gonna get to experience? Yeah. So okay, that one for sure. That's a very surface level one.
About food too before we started the camera rolling too. You know about a recent trip.
I did because I was very excited for you. Right? See, it's
good food.
I'm here for it.
You were excited.
I really was for you. 100%. Okay, and then obviously my kids make me happy, right? Duh. But like again, that sounds very surface level. Building core memories with my family, Dan, and kids makes me happy. And I also was recently reading something about that, like that we don't take enough time to stop caring about like the reason for something. Like let's just up and go do this thing, and that's part of me. Like I need to have like sometimes a reason to like do something. What is the reason why we're going to this thing? But this book challenged me to think about it as like, nope, you can just go do the thing and have a core memory built, and that's fine. And that embrace that like quiet happiness moment without feeling like you're wasting time. Like this was like a for nothing something. Like find the value in those moments.
A little bit more.
Correct. Trying to be present and to stop like making everything feel like there has to be like this reason why you're doing it. If that makes sense. Like, so yeah, I with kids especially, right? And that's something that I think I try to make sure I'm checking myself a little bit more because sometimes it would be like, let's go to this thing, and I'm like, why? We can just hang out here. But yeah, so that enjoying and trying to fixate a little bit more on those moments that makes me happy, especially when I'm realizing that I'm like letting it happen, right? So yeah, that makes me happy. This one's a funny one, not as philosophical at all, but many people don't know this about me. My mom is an antiquer, like has been like buying and selling things on eBay since eBay was a thing, which was like circa 2000, maybe late 90s. And so that naturally, of course, I love when I can find something at a garage sale or a thrift store for $1 and I can turn a profit on it and make even $20 or $50 or whatever on it. Like that actually makes me geek out and like, yes.
What's been your greatest find? I remember you telling me about this. I don't know if we did this last time on the show.
Did we talk about this last time?
I don't know if we did.
This is probably just in regular life when we've talked, not on the podcast. I don't think I've talked about this on the podcast.
Well, if we did, maybe it's here twice.
Well, maybe.
You found a better find by then. I don't know.
Oh, I'm trying to think. So this is probably my best one. So when I was in grad school, I was with some friends. We were on our way to a concert. We stopped at a garage sale, and there was a box of stuffed animals, and I went through it, And there were, back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, there were these stuffed animals called Jammy Pies dolls. And they were like these weird stuffed animals that were like in pajamas. And they were made by Play School, I think. Play School made them, I'm pretty sure. And they only were made for like 4 years. Like they were a short-lived doll, stuffy, plush thing. And so they're rare, right? And people, that's how people don't think. Like, just because it's old doesn't mean it's worth money.
Right.
Because if there's a bajillion of the thing,
Right.
no one cares.
Exactly.
These are very rare. And so I found one, and then I found another one in the box. And my friend Pete at the time could tell that I was like amped up, because he was like, what'd you find? I was like, not now. Because I was like trying to like be discreet and not like be super pumped about it. Well, then they didn't have a price. And I said to the woman, how much for these 2 dolls? I think I paid $25 for both. And I was like, oh my gosh. Geeking out inside. We get in the car, and Pete was like, what's going on? And I was like, these are Jamie Pie dolls. I sold one, I think for, again, I got 25 cents into both, right?
Yeah.
I think I sold one for like $150 something, maybe 120. Like, again, it wasn't, but like when I spent 5 cents on it,
Right.
and then I make $100 and something on it, that's a
yeah.
huge profit margin right there for my business friends. And then the other one I think was like for $9. Like they were both around the same. One was a little cooler than the other one, but so like I spent $25 and made $200 something.
Love it. Just see the excitement come around. You're ready to grow.
I was so geeked, and my friend, he could feel my excitement. I wasn't even saying anything, but he knew something was up, and I was like, so yeah, that makes me happy. Like those kind of moments. But of course, my family and friends, and like, I'm social, right? I'm very much an extrovert. So like those kind of moments, just like
Love it.
engaging with folks, makes me happy too. Fills my cup.
Yeah. There's value in finding what makes you happy, though. So a lot of people,
Right.
I don't think know that or find that, sadly. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, you're right.
you got to take that's self-reflection too. We talked about earlier.
It is.
Knowing yourself. Like, what do you love doing? Enjoy. So.
Yeah.
Great
Well,
answer. Love it.
Thanks.
There's a little blend of everything's great.
That wasn't.
Good.
I tried to making sure it wasn't
it was
all like
good.
surface level. I had to get a little philosophical, and like feely.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
like garage sailing too. You know.
I mean, yeah.
Of course, it's fun times.
Love those profits.
Okay. Put it into you.
Okay.
You don't know the next guest. What's the question you're gonna leave for them? Connected to what we talked about today, leadership, can be a little bit more general. What are you gonna ask?
I'm just kind of leaning between 2.
Leaning.
Right. At that time, I didn't even mean it. Okay. My question for the next person is, in the spirit of vulnerability and seeing failure as learning, can you share an example of a time that you thought you made a big mistake, but were able to have someone else, a supervisor, a coach, whoever, flip it for you to see the opportunity to learn? Or did you, what did you internally yourself learn from it?
Gotcha. Taking a mistake or failure, and then how did you grow and learn from that?
Yeah.
Did someone support that, or
Correct. Did someone help you see
That
it,
example.
or
Okay.
were you able to just naturally do that yourself?
That's a great question. I'm excited to see who's going to answer, what they're going to say. Viewers have to tune in next time to figure out who that is. ESG, thank you so much.
Thanks,
for being on
B-Skillet.
the show. It's a great time.
Good to see
Learned
you always.
so much. You shared so many important wisdom, nuggets, knowledge,
Tried.
dropping heat, as they would say.
I tried. Is that what they say these
No,
days?
I don't think they
Oh,
say
okay.
that. I just made it up, but maybe they do. I don't know.
Maybe you're starting
we
something
maybe
cool.
we started to try that
There you go.
around. Yeah.
Like bomb.com.
Yeah.
I'm bringing back the bomb.com
Yeah,
for
bomb.com.
viewers.
Yeah. I edit the word bomb out, so I don't know. Might
Fair.
get demonetized for that.
There you go.
Not
That's
like we're
fair.
actually monetized, but thank you again for tuning in. Appreciate you. For now, keep leading the way, and we'll see you next time on Leading to Leadership. Peace out.